When you think of Saudi Arabia today, it's almost impossible not to picture glittering skylines, endless desert highways, futuristic cities rising from the sand, and a kingdom overflowing with wealth. It feels ancient and untouchable, yet the truth is that Saudi Arabia as a nation isn't even 100 years old. Just a few generations ago, the land looked nothing like it does today. There were no glass towers, no megaprojects, no trillion-dollar investment funds. Instead, this was a harsh and isolated land of scattered tribes, endless dunes, and survival against unforgiving conditions. And yet, in less than a century, it transformed into one of the most powerful countries on Earth, controlling around 17% of the world's known oil reserves and overseeing wealth that exceeds $1 trillion. What's even more surprising is that part of the foundation for this rise can be traced back not just to the deserts of Arabia, but to American boardrooms and a name synonymous with global capitalism, Rockefeller. To understand how deep Saudi Arabia's power runs today, it helps to start with a moment that shocked the world. On October 2, 2018, Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul to collect paperwork for his upcoming wedding. He was a journalist, a critic of the Saudi leadership, and a man living in self-imposed exile. He never walked out. Turkish authorities later revealed that he had been killed and dismembered inside the building. For weeks, Saudi Arabia denied everything, before finally admitting that Khashoggi had been killed, insisting it was a rogue operation and that the order had not come from the very top. Whether that explanation is believed or not, one thing became painfully clear. Saudi Arabia wielded so much global influence that even an incident this explosive failed to seriously shake the foundations of power at the top. And the roots of that influence stretch far deeper than oil wells or modern politics. Those roots go back to the year 1744, long before oil was even a rumor beneath the sand. In the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, a local ruler named Muhammad bin Saud met a religious reformer named Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab. One had power but wanted expansion. The other had an ideology but lacked force. Wahhab preached a strict return to what he saw as pure Islam, but his ideas needed protection and muscle to spread. Bin Saud wanted to grow his territory, but he needed legitimacy to rally tribes behind him. Their pact was simple and effective. Religion would justify conquest, and conquest would protect religion. Faith and force became intertwined, and together they began expanding their control across the region. This alliance proved powerful, but it was not unstoppable. In 1818, Ottoman forces crushed their emerging state and forced the family into exile. Yet the fall was not the end. Only a few years later, the Al Saud returned, reclaiming territory and rebuilding influence. Internal rivalries and succession disputes threatened to tear them apart, but then a single figure changed everything. In 1902, Abdulaziz ibn Saud launched a daring raid on Riyadh, reclaiming his family's ancestral home. That victory triggered a chain reaction. Territory after territory fell under his control. By 1913, he dominated the Gulf Coast. By 1925, he had captured Mecca, the holiest city in Islam. And in 1932, he declared the formation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, uniting lands that had been divided for centuries under one crown. Abdulaziz didn't rely on warfare alone. He understood that unity required bonds stronger than swords. Through strategic marriages into powerful tribes and respected religious families, he tied the kingdom together through blood and loyalty. With dozens of wives and more than 40 sons, he created a sprawling royal lineage that would dominate Saudi politics for generations. But even with internal stability, the new kingdom faced a brutal reality. Saudi Arabia was poor. The land was unforgiving. There were no factories, no modern industries, and no natural wealth anyone could exploit with the technology of the time. Most people lived as nomads, raising camels, sheep, and goats, surviving on subsistence agriculture. The only steady income came from religious pilgrimage, as millions of Muslims traveled to Mecca each year, bringing modest but crucial revenue. Everything changed in 1933. That year, Saudi Arabia signed a landmark agreement with the Standard Oil Company of California, a corporate descendant of John D. Rockefeller's vast oil empire. Rockefeller himself was no longer alive, but his influence shaped the deal. This agreement led to the creation of what would eventually become Aramco and opened the door to a transformation no one could have fully imagined. The Saud family expected wealth, but not on the scale that followed. 5 years later, on March 3, 1938, deep beneath the sands near Dhahran, an American drill struck oil. Not just oil, but one of the largest petroleum reserves ever discovered. The desert began to change almost overnight. Roads appeared where none had existed. Pipelines stretched across barren land. Entire cities rose from nothing. By 1939, Saudi oil was flowing to global markets, first in small quantities, then in overwhelming volumes. And then the world went to war. During World War II, Saudi Arabia's strategic importance skyrocketed. Sitting at the crossroads of continents and trade routes, the kingdom became essential. The United States established a major airbase in Dhahran, securing military access and influence in the Middle East. When the war ended, a new era began. America needed oil more than ever, and Saudi Arabia needed security. Engineers, executives, and military advisors flooded into the kingdom. In return, Saudi elites traveled to the United States, witnessing industrial power and modern governance firsthand. On the surface, it looked like a perfect partnership. America got oil. Saudi Arabia got wealth, expertise, and protection. But the alliance created tension at home. The Wahhabi religious establishment, which had helped legitimize the Al Saud's rule, grew uneasy with the flood of money, foreign influence, and visible extravagance. Islam emphasized modesty and restraint, yet the royal lifestyle increasingly reflected excess. Golden palaces, private jets, superyachts, and record-breaking art purchases became symbols of Saudi wealth. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's purchase of a $450 million painting and a $300 million French chateau came to symbolize this new reality. At the same time, not everyone benefited. While the royal family accumulated immense wealth, millions of ordinary Saudis struggled. Welfare programs existed, but critics argued they were more about preserving stability and image than solving systemic inequality. Poverty remained a sensitive topic, rarely discussed openly. Stories of bloggers jailed for documenting poor living conditions only deepened concerns about free expression. Saudi Arabia projected an image of universal prosperity, but the reality beneath the surface was far more complex. As oil revenues grew, so did tensions with Aramco. The original agreements heavily favored American companies, and Saudi leaders wanted a larger share. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, negotiations reached a breaking point. Inspired by similar deals in Venezuela, Saudi Arabia demanded a 50-50 profit split. After intense pressure, Aramco agreed. This single move dramatically increased Saudi revenues and marked a turning point. The kingdom was no longer just a passive recipient of royalties. It was becoming a true partner. The United States, determined to maintain influence, responded with its own strategy. American oil companies received tax breaks that offset the higher payments to Saudi Arabia, keeping profits strong while ensuring the alliance endured. This model became a template. Whenever resource-rich nations moved toward nationalization, the U.S. used incentives, pressure, or intervention to protect access. Saudi Arabia, however, played the long game. Instead of seizing assets outright, it negotiated patiently. Through gradual increases in ownership, The kingdom took full control of Aramco by 1980 without triggering open conflict. This control laid the foundation for Saudi Arabia's dominance within OPEC. With massive reserves and spare production capacity, the kingdom gained unparalleled influence over global oil markets. It could raise or lower output to stabilize prices or pressure rivals. When Saudi Arabia acted, economies around the world felt the impact. Oil became more than a resource. It became a geopolitical weapon. Yet the kingdom understood oil would not last forever. Today, Saudi Arabia is investing heavily in diversification through its public investment fund, aiming to build wealth beyond petroleum. From technology and sports to renewable energy and megacities, the kingdom is reshaping its future. Still, much of its financial system remains tied to an agreement forged in the 1970s, the Petrodollar. By pricing oil exclusively in US dollars and reinvesting profits into American financial systems, Saudi Arabia and the US locked themselves into a relationship that reshaped the global economy. That relationship has endured scandals, wars, and political crises, including the fallout from Jamal Khashoggi's murder. In response, Saudi Arabia launched an aggressive rebranding campaign, investing in global sports, entertainment, and futuristic projects like NOM. But controversy persists. Migrant labor conditions, regional conflicts, and human rights concerns continue to shadow the kingdom's ambitions. For more than a century, the House of Saud has defied expectations. From tribal alliances and religious pacts to oil negotiations and global finance, they built a system designed to keep them in control. Even as the world begins to move beyond oil, Saudi Arabia is positioning itself for the next era. Whether that strategy will succeed remains an open question. But one thing is certain, the story of Saudi Arabia is not just a story of oil. It is a story of power, alliances, and long-term strategy, stretching from the deserts of the 18th century to the global stage of today. And now I'll leave the question with you. When the oil finally runs dry, will this carefully constructed system still hold? Or will the kingdom face its greatest test yet? Only time will tell.